Advisor to the Clinton campaign on economic and trade issues. When it comes to, let's do the trade first. When it comes to trade policy, Secretary Clinton is against TPP. You're against TPP, but it's possible, or it's likely, the president's going to try and get TPP through in a lame duck Congress before the end of the year.
Yeah, I find that outrageous. You know, both parties in their platform and the leaders have said this shouldn't be the way things in our democracy works. When you have an election, the leaders of both parties, the platforms, have raised deep doubts about TPP. To rush it through in a lame duck session, I think, is absolutely wrong. And I hope there is the will on the part of both parties.
What's wrong with that, though? I mean, in the same way that the Democrats have said, no, the president should be able to bring his Supreme Court nominee and not wait for a new president. What's wrong with TPP? He is still the president.
He is, but the question is, at that point, at the lame duck session, you have congressmen voting who know that they're not accountable anymore. They've been kicked out. And
arguably, they're the ones who can give the best votes.
The idea is that a lot of people who are not politically accountable because they're leaving may, in response to promises of jobs or, you know, just subtle understandings, do things that are not in the national interest. Now, let me try to explain why I and a lot of other people are against TPP. It's not that we're against trade. You know, Adam Smith, going back to Adam Smith, economists have talked about expanding markets, opens up advantages of economies of scale and taking advantage of comparative advantage. This is not a trade agreement. Even the administration's economists have come to calculations that the effect on GDP is minuscule, and more realistic estimates say that the effect on the economy is actually negative. What people care about is the provisions on intellectual property that will drive up drug prices, the provisions, what they call the investment provision, which will make it more difficult to regulate and actually harm trade.
But under the fast-track authority, there's not the ability to tinker with it. So this thing either goes down or there has to be a full-scale renegotiation with the other 11 partners.
Not necessarily a full-scale renegotiation. I've talked to some of the people in their partners. You know, it wasn't that we bargained badly. It was that our interests were reflected in corporate interest. You know, they were at the table. Ordinary citizens weren't. Even congressmen couldn't find out what the U.S. bargaining position was. So they want to renegotiate. We want to renegotiate.
So it would have to be a renegotiation, though. I mean, everybody back at the table.
Back at the table, but there is an understanding about where the problems are. So, the problems are in the investment agreement. The problems are especially with the intellectual property provision. That can be done.
Would you leave NAFTA alone?
No, I would change NAFTA, too, because Chapter 11 in NAFTA has the same provision of trying to discourage regulations with disastrous effects in Canada. And interestingly, when I was in the Clinton administration, no one ever discussed Chapter 11. Even as Clinton was pushing the agreement through, there was no discussion. And the reason was, it was inherited from the Bush administration, and nobody wanted to tinker it, and that was a big mistake.
So, finally, Professor, and bearing in mind that you are coming to us from a party pre-standpoint in the sense of supporting one candidate, are we at a moment in history where all the globalization rhetoric and policies that have driven trade for the last 2 decades are going to be rethought?
Oh, very much so. And the reason is very simple. The advocates of trade said it was going to benefit everybody. The evidence is it's benefited a few and left a lot behind. There could have been different. We could have managed trade in a way that would have had shared benefits. But that's not the trade agreements that we had. And now people are realizing that that rhetoric that everybody was going to be better off was a lie.